Hey guys, Bicep here, bringing you this 9.2 Unholy Death Knight quick guide. Today I'll be covering almost everything you need to know to play the Unholy Death Knight in the 9.2 patch, and I will do it in as a concise manner as possible. With that in mind, let's get right into it. For the single target rotation, we have 3 abilities that are like our core single target rotation: Festering Strike, Scourge Strike, and Death Call. We'll use Festering Strike to consume runes, generate runic power, and build festering wounds on our targets. We use Scourge Strike to pop those wounds, as well as spending our runes and generating runic power. And finally, we use Death Call to consume said runic power. Generally, we want to try and stay at 3 or more wounds on a target at any given point of time. However, you don't want to press Festering Strike too much. You only want to use that whenever the target has essentially 3 wounds. If you use the 4 more, you risk overcapping. When it comes to using resources, try and always make sure you have at least 3 runes recharging at any point in time, and also make sure that you don't overcap runic power. So don't use an ability that generates runic power when you are close to 100. For procs, we have Sudden Doom. It procs our auto attacks, just use them as quickly as possible, but they're not the highest priority. But do make sure you don't sit on one in a very long time. Furthermore, we also have a dot called Virulent Plague. We apply that with Outbreak, but in single target situations, we apply it through some other talents. If we can get more than 15 seconds uptime on Virulent Plague, it's worth to press Outbreak to apply it. But on single target, most often you don't need to actually actively apply it. When it comes to any cleave scenario, especially in raid, what we're going to do is pop down our Deafening K ability and then just spam our Scourge Strike. You don't need to care too much about having festering wounds on the targets. Instead, just Scourge Strike cleave is sufficient. When it comes to cooldowns, we have a cooldown window of 45 seconds where we use Unholy Blight, Dark Transformation, and Apocalypse. These will always want to be used together, and you can do it due to different kinds of cooldown reduction effects. Apocalypse should always be used at 4 wounds on a target, which is the reason why we start high in wounds at all time. It makes it easier to set up that cooldown window. We also have Soul Reaper. This is a talent that we usually pick up. This is our execute ability. We want to make sure to use that as much as possible whenever the target drops below 35% health. Furthermore, when we pick up the Unholy 4 set, Soul Reaper sniping is a thing, which means that you want to use Soul Reaper on targets that will even die before the damage effect triggers. This is usually not worth, but we force it, it is. We also have Army of the Dead. This is our main big cooldown. It has an effective 3.5 to 4 minute CD with our Army of the Damned talent. You want to use that on tool, and then you want to use it again, making sure to always time up the other cooldowns. Generally, it takes 5 to 10 seconds for it actually to get started, which means that you want to use it and then wait 5 to 10 seconds before you use everything else. We have our Covenant abilities. We pretty much always just use them on cooldown. Nothing too fancy going on there. When it comes to the single target opener, we start off by hitting Army of the Dead just as we reach the boss. We then use double Festering Strike into Unholy Blight with our unused Trinket and Potion. We then follow up with Dark Transformation into Apocalypse and then into our Covenant ability. And after that point, we simply follow the single target rotation. For Mythic Plus, the whole rotation is divided into different sections where we set up and then leverage our resource gate to actually deal damage. Generally, you will start off by applying Festering Strike twice, and then you will pop all the cooldowns, move into dumping and runic power using Epidemic. Epidemic is an AoE ability that replaces Death Call essentially, and you want to use that whenever there are more than 4 stacked targets generally. Once you dumped your runic power, you put down Deafening K and you just spam Scourge Strike. If the pack or whatever cleave you're fighting lasts for longer than your Deafening K window, you move into your single target rotation, but instead of pressing Death Call, we use Epidemic to do our cleave. Great. For Covenants, we have Necrolord, which is the option for pure single target, and is the one you always pick up for raids. The single target throughput is simply superior compared to other Covenants. For Mythic Plus, you can either pick up Necrolord for a bit more single target oriented build, which is versatile, or you go into Night Fae, which is our big AoE build. Make the personal judgment, look at what your party brings, and then choose whatever you fancy based on that. When it comes to Soulbinds, for Necrolord we always pick up Maraleth with the triple potency. For Night Fae, we go triple potency Dreamweaver. For Venther, we pick up Nadia. And then for Kyrian, we do Mechanicus. Talents. For Raid, we essentially have a single target oriented build. You can see up here. The only real choice here is in the first talent row. Cloaking Shadows gain value whenever you have lots of downtime or when you can't leverage your pet that always summons. One instance of this is for the Halantros fight, because the pet really can't run and fire at the same time. Always Serve is your default choice. It gets buffed quite heavily with your 4 set, which is why it's kind of like the best choice overall. Infected Claws is great for Cleave, so especially Cleave that lasts for a long time, so Lords of Dread and fights such as Prototype Pantheon, great pick for Infected Claws. For Mythic Plus, we can either run the versatile Raid build with the Cloaking Shadows, or you can go full all AoE with this Infected Claws, Bursting Souls, and Defile build, which runs which run with Night Fae. Defile can actually also be picked in Raid and single target. If you run Night Fae, it does quite a lot of damage when you pick up the Withering Ground Conduit. For Legendaries, we have the Pure Single choice, which is Deadliest Coil, and it's going to be your go-to option for progression fights. We also have Friends of Monstrosity, which is relatively close and single target and brings quite a lot of cleave, which is good for fights whenever there are, intermittent add waves like Artificer, for instance. Furthermore, we have Reanimate the Shambler. This is a legendary you can run in Mythic class with the Night Fae build I talked about earlier, because he deals a ton of AoE damage and applies lots of wounds, which that build relies heavily on. For Conduits, we have a couple S tier conduits. We have Eternal Hunger and Convocation of Dead. You're always going to pick up those two. We also have Brutal Grasp if you're running Necrolord. That's also a great pick. And then Withering Ground if you're running Night Fae and the Defire build. When it comes to A tier conduits, we have things like Adaptive Armor Fragment that you would run with other Covenants. Or you can pick up their own Covenant-specific Covenant conduits if you're running AoE scenarios. For stats, we generally like a balanced stat build where Mastery is your highest, and then Haste, and then Crit, and then Verse is quite low. I'm talking about absolute stat amount here, so I want to make sure Mastery is around 900, and then you would have Haste at 600 and Crit at 400, for instance. The reason it matters is because we run the Inscrutable Quantum device, and that triggers based off your raw stat values. So during Lust, it triggers your highest. That's why you want Mastery to be a higher stat. And then outside Lust, you get one of the two best ones. And then you want either Mastery or Haste. So that's generally when you want those two being actually raw higher stats. For Consumables, here's the long list. It's nothing fancy in there. We like to run Sharpening Stones. That's different from other classes. But other than that, we run Rune Crusade as our Rune Forge. And then just enchant the normal kind of stuff. Pick up generally Mastery for ring enchants, for gems, but it depends on your stats weight, so you can always just simulate the character to figure that out. Finally, for Trinkets, Inscrutable Quantum device is your best trinket. It works so well with your army. You use it on pool to boost the army extensively, and then you use it again with your second army, and it's just so good. Second trinket is generally a good idea to have some kind of passive one, so Elegy from the raid is going to be your second trinket in the biz setup. For Mythic class, you want to run Overwhelming Power Crystal. The short cooldown fits really nicely with our short CD windows. You can choose to run something passive with that, like Elegy, or you can also run Inscrutable Quantum device to actually do double on use. Finally, I want to mention Whispering Shard of Power. It's a trinket from the previous raid, which actually can be used when we get to 4 set. It triggers these little enemies you can kill with Soul Reaper, snipes it, and gets a big buff from it. Unclear at the moment if it's worth it, but I just want to mention it. Furthermore, the weapon from the Jailer deserves a special mention because it's extremely powerful. Again, we can use the little minion it spawns to trigger Soul Reaper. So in the opener, for instance, you press your Jailer weapon, you press Soul Reaper on the ad, and it gives you a huge buff to your opener army, which is going to be a significant DPS increase. Alright, that was all about Unholy in as fast as I could do it. So hope you guys found that useful. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions, if you felt like I missed out on something. Upvote, downvote, consider subscribing, and always hook me up on the Acros Discord if you have any questions. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.